Today we're going to be reviving one of the classic old school cocktails of the United States. It is called the Ansonia, and this cocktail was actually sent in suggested to us by one of the good friends of the tale, Ned Heltzer. So Ned, thank you very much for that. When I first got the recipe, I looked it over and saw that it was going to be a tasty cocktail. It rang true to a couple of the old school classics with a little spin on it. But then I did some research and read into the history of why this cocktail was created. And there's no way that we couldn't share it with you after that today. And this is the reason. The Ansonia was named after the most opulent and luxurious hotel of the time that was built in the turn of the 1900s. The residence and hotel was so crazy that it housed a family of live seals in its front lobby in their fountain and had a full farmyard of animals on the top roof of the building, which included dairy cows and, for some crazy reason, a small bear. So with that in mind, we decided we had to try this drink, and now we have to share it with you. It is a very basic drink to make. Just creates a few different, it just needs a few different ingredients. It's a very basic drink to make. It's a very basic drink to make. It just takes a few simple ingredients, but it is a Scotch-based cocktail. So it calls for Dewar's blended Scotch, Martini Rossi sweet vermouth, Luxardo maraschino liqueur, and also absinthe. Absinthe, very interesting ingredient, because in the 1930s when this cocktail was actually conceived, absinthe was illegal in the United States. So the original recipe called for Aujan bitters. Aujan was a brand of absinthe that did exist in France. So anytime a bartender saw Aujan on the recipe card, he knew that he was actually going to be making absinthe and had to reach under the counter, grab his sneaky little bottle of illegal absinthe, and use that instead. So pretty cool history here. So we'll get right into it. The Ansonia, this is going to be a stirred cocktail. So we're going to start off by putting our ice into our cocktail mixer. Ice is definitely an ingredient in any cocktail. Don't overlook it, it's very important. It adds chill factor, obviously, but also a very important amount of water which melts from the ice into your drink, creating a nice balanced cocktail with the alcohol. So you want to load up your cocktail mixer with ice, and then we're going to be putting in 2 ounces of our Dewar's White Label Scotch. So with your jigger here, you have the top half, large half, that's a 2-ounce pour. The small half, 1-ounce pour. If you don't have a jigger, you can just keep to those ratios. So 2 ounces or 2 parts Dewar's White Label Scotch, and ½ an ounce of our Martini Rossi sweet vermouth. The original recipe called for this particular brand. It was very popular back then. But if you have a different sweet vermouth at your home that is your favorite, please go ahead and use that as well. So ½ an ounce straight in over the rocks. And then we have our Luxardo maraschino liqueur. So this is where some of that opulence from the Ansonia Hotel is coming into this cocktail. Now this is only ½ an ounce. So we're just going to measure this very carefully. Maraschino liqueur, as the name may suggest, has a cherry profile to it. It is a little sugary and sweet, but it has a slight tartness to it as well, which is going to blend into these different flavors really nicely. So Luxardo maraschino. And then we are going to go ahead and stir our cocktail. We've left the absinthe out of our cocktail mixer, and we're actually going to be seasoning the glass with the absinthe in just a second. But first we're going to be stirring this down. And we talked about the ice. So as we start to stir that water level, or the liquid level in the shaker, now we talked about the ice. So as we start to stir, you'll see the liquid level rising up, the ice settling down, and the liquid is actually cresting over and above the ice. So we don't want that to happen, because if that's the case, then there's some liquid in there that is really not interacting and getting the melt and the chill factor that the ice is underneath. So go ahead, top that up, and continue your stir. You'll see the liquid start to rise up to that level, and we have now the really great ratio that we want to get a perfectly chilled cocktail. We'll let that sit to the side, and we're going to work on our glass. So for this, we are using absinthe. I have poured the absinthe into an atomizer. Atomizers are easily found online, or if you want to improvise at home, then you can empty out a cologne bottle or a perfume bottle. Make sure you rinse it out a lot, because you don't want those floral notes coming into your cocktail. and then just delicately spritz the outside, the inside of the glass with your absinthe. Another way to do this without an atomizer would be to pour a little bit of absinthe into the glass, roll it around the edge of the glass, and dump it out. Just be careful that when you do that, you are dumping out as much of that liquid as possible. Absinthe is quite a thick, sticky liquid, so it can stick to the inside of your glass quite a lot. And if you do that, you'll have sometimes an imbalanced cocktail. So I always recommend the atomizer. Now we've seasoned our glass, it's going to give us really great aromas when we lift that up to take our first sip. Our cocktail is chilled down just how we want it. And with every stirred cocktail that we have, we're going to be double straining this. So first through a regular cocktail strainer, and then secondly through a fine tea strainer. And the purpose of this is just to catch those little chips of ice that have broken off during the stirring process so that we don't get a little iceberg sip in our mouth, which will give us a shock of temperature and crunch as well that we definitely want to avoid. So that's nicely strained into our glass. We're almost there. The last little ingredient, though, is going to be an important one. It's going to be the little treat for the end of the cocktail, which is our bourbon-soaked cherry. This is a Marasca cherry. It is a dark cherry version of a maraschino. It has richer notes to it, and then this is soaked in a bourbon sugar solution for a couple of months. They are preserved already, so you can leave these really sitting around once you've put them into the solution for a year and still enjoy it. If you're like me, you'll just throw the cherry straight in there, forget about it, and have a little nippy sweetie for the end of your cocktail for the last little sip. But I do know a lot of people that cannot resist something good. So if you're one of those people, pop it on a little cocktail pick into your glass. That way you can fish it out without getting your fingers dirty. But please, let it sit there enough to soak in some of that goodness of the cocktail that you just spent a few minutes making. And there it is. It's free for you to enjoy. The Ansonia. Cheers.